Hi, Pato. This is Alex, and I am recording a video for my Brooklyn College students in the class called Learning from YouTube, which is going to introduce them in a very quick way, to some of the things that are on my mind teaching this class. And this is, I think, the fifth time I've taught it. The first time was in 2007, in the first year of YouTube. And most recently, I taught it in 2015. And there's three things that are on my mind about how this class is a completely new beast, new under the sun, from what happened when I taught a class about YouTube on YouTube at the first year of YouTube. And one is that my students now have lived with it their whole lives, and it's not a new thing. And I'm very interested to know how they react to the work of their fellow students for whom it was new and the class was learning what it was. The second is that YouTube is embedded in a complex infrastructure of platforms. When we studied it, it was the first social media platform where people could make their own media and participate in media production and also education. And now it's interlaced with other platforms. And you can move video, which is a particular concern of mine, in all kinds of places, whether that's Instagram, TikTok, or just use with your phone. And that was not possible when we first started teaching. But the third change of condition is COVID, and the fact that the course is called Learning from YouTube. It's about learning as facilitated or subsumed by corporate entities. And in the past, my students had never had a life online fully. They anticipated that as a possibility. They had never only learned online. They anticipated that as a possibility. And in this iteration of the course, the first that I'm going to teach in public, in person, since COVID, we have knowledge of what it means to learn on Zoom, this new technology, and to have our education subsumed into this machine and this digital space in relationship to care and fear, loss, and hope in relationship to a viral pandemic, which was and is COVID. So you and I have had a lot of Zoom conversations, which we've recorded as videos. I think this is the new format of the digital and of video that came into being because of COVID. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I would love if you have anything you'd like to say to my students about viral media and the relationship between the Zoom digital space, education, and our ongoing conversation about COVID, as people who both had COVID in March 2022 and who long hauled with COVID after March 2022. And any comments, will be really excited and appreciate to hear from you.
Well, I appreciate you reaching out. It was great to be in conversation about this, and it makes me jealous. I wish I could be with you all this semester. I'm excited for the path y'all have together and with Professor Ubas. Where my mind went was a couple of things. During COVID, I've talked about, and you and I have theorized, the paradox of screen as care. That when we needed to be physically distanced in order to take care of one another, we weren't quite sure how COVID was transmitted, or it wasn't safe to get on planes, or we weren't sure how to be with one another, family members across great distance. The screen became a way to try to stay connected, but also to care for one another, right? By not passing on COVID to one another. And yet there are limits to the screen. We miss feeling each other's warmth or smelling each other, or being in the same physical space. And so I've been thinking a lot about the paradox of screen as care. In finally spending some time with my extended family, I've noticed that on the one hand, there's an elder in my family and there's a 10-year-old, and they're both what I would call addicted to YouTube. They're just surfing constantly. And I kind of might have expected it from the 10-year-old, but I'd hear these voices coming from the other room. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I'm listening to a YouTuber, and just like for hours, right? Which is the whole question of the tablet and, babysitting through tablet. But then also I found out that this elder in my life was constantly bopping through YouTube videos. And so I didn't know what to make of that, right? Because that's not my practice. I don't watch YouTube as if it were a TV channel. So that's the second observation. And so I'm really curious how YouTube is living or not in each of your lives and what you make of it, what purpose it serves. But I don't disagree with you that Zoom might be the way that we convene or meet, but I would hold in the young people in my life, FaceTime, right, or Google's versions of that. I think that Zoom is a little bit institutional and or collective, but I think a lot of one-on-one screen-based interaction actually happens in other ways as well. So I'm wondering how much Zoom becomes again an institutional frame, or when we need to build a critical mass that it overloads FaceTime or some of the other ways. FaceTime, of course, assumes access to certain kinds of smartphones, etc. But I would say, I want to ask you, as your generation, as the TikTok generation, I'm very curious how and why TikTok has arisen and how to hold that in relationship to a COVID moment. And if what you're going to learn together with each other and Professor Yuhas this semester is how to think about where YouTube has been and where it is now and where it's going. I want to posit a question that I don't know if it's completely off, but is TikTok the YouTube of this moment? In other words, do you have any instinct where TikTok might be in the world and in your lives 5 or 10 years from now? And how might we think about TikTok's virality with video, its explosiveness, right? In relationship to what we saw with YouTube when it started and where it's at now. So if YouTube is the television for 2 different generations of my family, but TikTok is still a kind of space that isn't mainstream, how might that shift the relationship between screen and liveness in our lives going forward?
Well, thank you for your observations. And you want to tell my students where to find you?
You can always look at patohebert.com and see an ancient website that's very rarely updated, part of this very dilemma. I'm most active in an updated way on Instagram at Volandito, this made up Spanish word VOLANDITO. And one of my institutional roots is at New York University, where I chair the Department of Art and Public Policy.
Well, and if people are interested in learning more about our ongoing writing about COVID and the politics and cultural production around that, you can find that at Arts Everywhere, where we have a series that we co-edited on long hauling. So I appreciate your time, and I'm excited to share this video with my students on the first day.
Yeah, happy first class, y'all.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.